Oh, hi. I didn't see you all there, all you beautiful bastards, bad bitches, and lovely, amazing dreamers out there. Hi. Hello. Um, I guess I'm kind of getting into doing vlog style content. For those of you who magically don't know what vlogs are, I'm sure the terminology will change as time decides to go on because that's what it inexorably does. It's where I just talk to you like I'm talking to a person because I don't have many friends. And yeah, I just don't have many friends, and obviously, family is all doing their own thing, and I'm left here still sorting out my life, which is fine by me because I've come to start enjoying it. I guess I don't really have. I have a few different things to talk about right now. Not much though, but it is what it is. So, um, I guess I'm gonna start this off with I just got back from walking my dog. It's like 7:05 in the morning, so I got up at like 6:30 ish, and I finally decided to start my day at the the I'm a functioning member of society hours. Aside from the fact that I have a job that I work 40 hours a week that barely pays me enough money. Um, if you're wondering how much money that is, you're gonna keep wondering because it's not enough. It's not small, but it's not enough. Um, but I'm tired of not enjoying my life, so I don't know. I guess yeah. I took my dog on the walk, and I do this weird thing where I'll walk like 3 or 4 blocks, and on the 3 or 4 blocks that lead back to my house, I'll jog or run. Now, mind you, this dog's she's an energetic little girl. She's super sweet, super awesome. Um, doesn't have friends either. Unfortunately, all her friends have died, and she now remains. And yeah, pretty sure that's given her some sort of anxiety or gone away, as one case may be in particular. Um, and we were walking, and I was on the street leads back to my house, and we were starting our jog, and we got about 2 blocks down, and she sees a bunny, and just starts pulling like even as I'm running and jogging with her, what have you. I'm not keeping up with her. She's a four-legged beast, and I'm a bipedal monkey. And at that point, I'm just letting momentum do more of the work, and my legs just work under me. It's an interesting little thing. I basically became a cart that this dog was pulling, and when that happened, she goes even faster, and I'm just like, I'm not keeping up with. I mean, I managed not to fall on my face and whatever. I'm letting her have a good time. She needs to get the energy out. But that bunny was, yeah, it was haul. This little bob and white tail, little bunny tail. It was cute to see too. Nature's awesome, guys. If you haven't gotten out in nature and like become one with it as a person at all in your life, I suggest doing so. Like, do bees sometimes make you a little worried with them wanting to sting you? Yeah, sure. I've been stung by hornets a couple times. Those guys are little pissheads. Still part of nature, and I kind of like them because they're like nature soldiers, but they're still pissheads. Um, yeah, and whoo, that was just yeah. I guess I'm still catching my breath from it. But I, I guess the second topic that I kind of want to get into is work, because I haven't talked about that in a hot minute. So I work in a factory, as some of you all may know, and that factory is not no if any factory as far as I can tell. There's only been one place that I've worked so far that has kind of semi decently treated its workers well, and well, for the pay it was good for how they treated them. Still not good for the hours, and good for everybody technically, but that's beside the point. Um, that factory had an issue with me. So, I just mentioned I'm not really making enough money. I still live with my father, and eventually I would love to move out. It just is what it is. I don't want to go into all the topic that's involved there, everything that's involved there. But it had an issue. You see, I was like, as much as I love going home at quitting time, I was like, a little extra money ain't gonna hurt. So I want to do some overtime. However, there's a bit of an issue. So a few years ago, and I'm also not going to dive too deep into this topic either because I'm still sort of coming out of the outs end of it, if you will. I broke my pelvis. Now you're probably wondering, that's like one of the weirdest bones you could manage to break. The only one weirder, I don't think there is any bone weirder that you can break than your pelvis, in my opinion, because how do you break your pelvis? Your legs, you're on them, and they can get caught. Your arms, all that shit. The four limbs that are not your main torso and your butt cheeks, essentially, completely understandable to break and whatnot. Your ribs, also slightly understandable depending on what your hobbies are and whatnot, which also I hear is one of the most painful bones to break. So I mean, if I can put in my 2 cents, if you will, I think about the other one more painful than that will be your pelvis, because again, it's one of your stabilizers. It is your stabilizer. So I'm still reeling with everything that has to deal with that. Not entirely in the sense that I'm not healed. I can walk. I thank the Lord for that every day. Thank God for that every day. I can walk. I didn't need surgery. I just needed bed rest. But the fact of the matter is working in a factory, in a manufacturing factory, certain positions and whatnot for, extended periods of time, I just become, in pain in. Kind of smells like dog dookie. No, never mind. I guess I'm just catching whiffs, so it's still sticking to my clothes-ish. I don't know. Unless she decided to take another poop downstairs or something, I'll check that after the video. I mean, if it's done, it's done. And I'm just I'll take some overtime because they were offering some overtime. And, I stay over that night. And mind you, this was in the past week. It's, May 10th, 9th? May 9th. So this was literally this past week. It's I'll take some overtime because you're offering it, nonetheless. I didn't even specifically request or volunteer for it. I mean, I kind of did when they offered it to me, but again, you're offering it to me. Beside the point. So I'm yeah, sure, I'll take the overtime. But mind you, 2-3 months ago, I had a whole issue. And by the way, HR sucks, and HRs are nothing but rats, okay? They're there for the company, not for you. Okay, so theoretically, if you can avoid dealing with HR, try and avoid dealing with HR, because they're never going to take your side, man. I don't think I've worked for a single company where HR has actually been on your side. It sucks. It really does just suck. Welcome to, I guess, the capitalist American hellhole. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. So I do the 1 hour of overtime that they requested me for, and they even offered for me to come in early the next morning. I was all right, as much as I hate getting up at 2 o'clock in the fucking morning, I'll do that too, because again, it's time and a half, so I'm only making, I'm not going to say how much I make an hour, but I'm making basically $10 more an hour, which is really not all that much at the end of the day. All that much extra for the time and energy that I'm putting out for this worthless, greedy, ran by a lobbyist, probably dumbass, douchebag motherfucker that is now known as Jaegerbomb, in my opinion, and not even the fun kind, more like I will kill your entire family kind of Jaegerbomb. And my supervisor, or the supervisor that was giving me the overtime, caught me on the way out, and he's like, "Hey, yo, do you have restrictions?" I'm just like, and at the time, I told him yes, because I didn't entirely realize that theoretically, technically, there is a difference between accommodations and restrictions. The differences being, restrictions can be lifted after a certain amount of time. Accommodations are not. Okay. So the whole point is a restriction is it, and this is, I have connections of sorts working here, and they explain this to me, is that the restriction is basically more or less has to do with injuries that you have on the job, and that, persist from you working at that particular job and happened while you were working at their facility during your working hours and whatnot, that will be lifted eventually. Accommodations are physical inhibitors that have happened from previous jobs or previous life experiences that cannot be lifted because, again, there's still some irritability and whatnot. You break a bone, and unless you're like super young, and I mean, granted, I've healed really well, but I still have some lasting effects from it because it happened when I was like 22. When you break a bone when you're like, I don't know, say ages 8 to 18, essentially, basically the young formative years, your body has more than enough, growing and whatnot to do that it fixes that stuff really good and really well before you become an adult and everything starts slowing down and you start actually aging and seeing life as the end that is the grave at some point. Not that you shouldn't live it and enjoy it, but, there's one thing, there's two things really all humans, all living things, grass, animals, humans have in common, and that's death and life. Life and death. Two things. Really simple concepts at the end of the day. We don't understand either fully, but we at least are aware of them. We see them every day. Quite literally. So, obviously, I have lasting effects from that. And initially, when I was working here, they had me working a job where I was getting up and down off the ground, on my knees, squatting down repetitively for, I work 10-hour days. So for 10 hours every day, and I was coming home irritable, angry, and in pain. And I may be really good at hiding my pain. And trust me, I am really good at hiding my pain and the effects that it has had on me. But it doesn't mean that it's not still there, because it is, especially when I'm having to do that kind of stuff, which is going to suck when I do start inevitably hitting the gym, because, squats, it will be something that I have to do. But, at least that will be at my pace instead of the Hitlerian Auschwitz style, work faster, work harder, shit out this product that is factory work. And so, again, going back to the story, I was like, yeah, I have restrictions. And then I got, I got into contact with my connections, if you will, and I talked with them, and they're like, yeah, no, you should probably go into HR and talk to them, because like an accommodation again is something that will not be will never be lifted, and a restriction is something that will be lifted. And these are two different things, theoretically, technically. And I was like, okay, all right, I can do that. So I go into HR the following morning, and I'm just like, okay, so I have this question, and I'm just like, do I have a restriction? Because I may have told my supervisor that I was working some overtime that I accidentally stayed over for, because by your company's policy, I am not allowed any overtime whatsoever. And, I'm like, I didn't know that, so I accidentally stayed over for some overtime. And they're like, oh yeah, no, you're not allowed to do that. It's like, okay, so is it a restriction or is it an accommodation? Because I'm talking to the HR manager. I was like, I'm under the impression that it was a accommodation and not a restriction. And he's like, oh no, they're both the same thing. And I'm just like, okay, so and this was something else that my contact told me to ask. I was like, so for clarification, does that mean that when you guys do mandatory overtime, I'm exempt from it? And he's like, oh, oh, no. And I'm just like, huh? What? How does that make sense? Okay, so I can't, again, I can still work these jobs. There's multiple other jobs in this facility that have overtime in positions that do not cause me that excruciating, debilitating pain at the end of the day. And his reasoning was, no, you'd be working your normal job. And I'm just like, okay, well, again, these jobs that I normally would work are normal positioning jobs that I would not really have that issue with. So, and again, this was just something because I was like, I'm 50-50 on it all because, again, the money for mandatory overtime, that's a whole 10 hours of overtime. That's kind of worth it. So ultimately, I don't entirely care. But at the same time, it's like, why is the company getting to have its cake and eat it too, That doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, they have this weird policy also that their policy and handbook, whatever, is subject to change at any time without any prior notice. So, once again, they're just finding any way to, as hard as they can. And I'm just like, fine, cool, all right, whatever. I can't volunteer for overtime. That's fine. That's fine by me. Ultimately, I like getting off at 3:00. So why not? And that really just means the 10 hours will be, when it's mandatory, decent enough money. If they ever do that, because we are experiencing a lot of slow times right now, which I'm fine with, once again, since I still live with my parents, as much as it kind of sucks. Well, not parent. Love them to death, though. Sorry about that. Kind of cold out there with that jog. So yeah, that's kind of really annoying, in all honesty, that they can do that to you. But I guess I'm a good wage slave. I don't get to have a life because I screwed up my life growing up. Nothing ever made sense, and I didn't know how to properly ask questions, and I didn't develop as well as other people did. But I'm still out here living, so there's that. I don't know. And I guess the kind of third thing in this, I'm hoping to have this done and over with before 20-minute mark, is that sometimes I feel like I'm being watched by, because I like to talk about things that theoretically you should not entirely talk about, and theoretically certain people that have certain stakes in different aspects of people's life. I share different topics, from, I don't know, say, happenings that are in Europe, if you will. Certain things going on out there, certain perspectives from what's going on out there. And a certain nation that, kind of helps, kind of is the center of my religion. I'm Catholic, so if you're able to think that forward some, I haven't had some of the nicest things to say about the country that starts with, is, So sometimes I feel like I'm being watched by different agencies a lot. And honestly, I don't care. Keep watching. All you're going to do is either end up killing me, which is, again, part of God's plan, or I'm going to keep living, which is part of God's plan. Don't know. Don't care. What can I do besides continue to live or die? I have literally zero control here. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I'm really good at that. So maybe that's just conspiratorial. Maybe I don't want to be labeled as the nut job or whatever. But sometimes I wonder. So Because, I don't know, there's just some things that I notice sometimes that are more than off-putting. But anyways, this is going to be the end of this video. I hope all you beautiful bastards, bad bitches, and lovely, amazing dreamers out there have a wonderful day. This is your Captain Dreamer signing off. Until the next video.